All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So thank you guys again for coming out today, coming back again this week. I think there's a few people who weren't here last time. So my name is Cassie Becker. I'm the president of the club. And today we're gonna just kind of cover some stuff that's a good base to get going into the semester. So just a few different things. First thing we're gonna touch on is eBird. I know if you've been on our river walks, our trip to Pickerington Ponds, we talked about eBird. So some people weren't familiar with that. Then we're gonna go into kind of just some ID tips. So thinking what we could do to start the semester, we were thinking okay, we could just jump in and explain a bunch of species, how to identify them, but we're like, okay, we could rattle these all off and it's gonna be super hard to remember all this stuff. So instead we're gonna go through kind of how to work through ID and that sort of thing, because it can be really good for new people learning, seeing what to look for instead of just, oh, this bird has a yellow head like all these other ones, like specific field marks. And then also, I knew growing up with birding, there were some things that I thought I learned early on, didn't realize exactly what it meant. And as I got older, I was always embarrassed to ask, which you should never feel that. We're very open in this club, everyone's learning. But it's just a good refresher going into the semester. And at the end, we're gonna do a little fall migrants quiz. Whoever gets the most right, we're gonna give the Warbler guide app to. So it's a fun way just to test out what you learned today, and then also just some competition. So let's jump into it. All right, so first I'm gonna go over eBird stuff. What? Okay. If it opens, please. Please, okay, well, I guess I'll just do it myself. That little screen sharing thing pops up every time I try to open a new tab. It's such a pain. I can't type. Oh my gosh, I even tried to fix it. I just cannot type. There, okay. Okay, so for those of you new to eBird, you may have downloaded the app for it when we were on one of our walks or something. And it'll look a little different. It doesn't have near as many features. So the website's the main really good place to go to. But the app is nice for submitting checklists, finding hotspots, seeing your numbers, that sort of thing. But first of all, the most basic part of it, here's the home page. And it has some of your different stats on it, nice photo on the front. But then if you go to the submit area, this is where you'll be making checklists at. So just to kind of show, say I just pick a random spot, I don't even know what these coordinates are. You can go through, put date, what you were doing. I'll just say stationary and put in a random time. Just again, kind of show what a checklist looks like. So basically every eBird checklist when you go to submit it will see your location you're at and tell you what species are likely to be in that area. So you can go in, put whatever you saw that day. If you saw anything rare, you can hit show rarities and you'll have to write a description of it. And the reason why that's so important is eBird is part of Cornell's Lab of Ornithology and their research. So all the data that's going into eBird is being used for scientific data. People can access it to use it for their own research. So it's really important to be accurate and to the best of your abilities. It's okay for making mistakes and learning, but just put in your information, and then if you put something in rare, you have to put in comments. There's reviewers who are going through and making sure this data looks accurate so that it can be as scientific as possible. So once these checklists are submitted, something they kind of look like, I'll show more of this my eBird in a second, but I just want to show, let me find a good one. Yeah, so this is what your general eBird checklist will look like. It shows where you were, what day, how many people were there, all the effort, all that data you would need. And then it just has your species observed. So if you want, you can upload a photo to go with it. You can do audio, video recordings of something they're rolling out right now. But yeah, it just has all that information, all the different numbers and everything for that day. So that's what eBird, all their data is based off, it's the biggest citizen science project. It's just everyone putting in the birds they saw and compiling data. So it's beneficial for science in that aspect. It's also beneficial for yourself as a birder to use it. So like I showed before, to jump to that, this is your My eBird tab. So it shows all your numbers. It's really good for keeping your life list. So I used to keep mine on one of those random apps you could download. And after I've been birding about 5 years, it just wiped one day. And I had to go back and remember everything I'd seen. So that was stressful. It was a pain. So eBird is this big database, so you know your data is secure on that. And it's just easy to access. So you can see lots of cool trends too. So right now I have it on the world. It tells me my species observed, my number of checklists. It breaks it down by year, compares how I'm doing to previous years, the month even. I could go in and say like Ohio. Let's see. Telling my species observed in Ohio, my top counties. So it really breaks it down for you if you want to get into listing, be competitive with it, or just see different trends in your own data. It's really cool to use. You can also see some of your checklists, your media, and then they have this thing for your profile. So the fun thing with that is it fills out a map of everywhere that you've submitted an eBird checklist from. So different colors are a gradient for the more species. So you can see state level, county level. I really need to get to Huron, Ohio. That's driving me crazy. But it's really cool because then we'll track different stuff. Like those of us who think the counties are fun. Good example, Wisconsin. So for the Minnesota trip, we'll make sure we get at least, let's see, some of these have like 3 species in it. We'll make sure if there's like a crow flying over a vulture or something, we'll put it in so we can get our little county showing. So it's a fun way to track where you've been birding, see how you've traveled. And it's just a good way to keep track of your own life list. And as we make checklists with the club and you guys give us your account and we share it to you, it'll automatically get incorporated into this. So you don't have to do anything. But then it's also fun and really helpful as a birder with this Explore tab. So this has a lot of different information in here. And it really helps if there's a species you're looking for, you're wanting to go birding, not sure where to go, all that sort of thing. So going to this Explore species, just to show what some of these are. Say I really want to see a parula, my favorite bird. I can go to parula's page, shows me what they look like, if I've seen one, have a photo, anything like that. How many times I've seen them, some of the top photos and audio if I want more photos of it. And then a really nice feature of this is the range maps. So if I go in, if it loads, it's been slow for me today. It crashed. I don't know what they're doing. So let's say I'm like, okay, I really want to see a parula. So sometime this fall, where have they been at this year? I can set that and zoom into Columbus. And then I can see, click the little red pin on Patterson Avenue. No, I'm going to click the one on Duranzo because that's when I had one today. So I saw you had one today, though. But so any of these red pins shows seen within the last 30 days. If it was blue, it would be like greater than 30 days. But then you can see where they're at. So if that's a species you really want to go see, you can go see one. On the other hand, if you just want to go birding in the area and not sure what's really around, you can do explore regions. So I'm going to put in Franklin County, Ohio, where we're at. And it'll tell me, oh, there's Galpin's list. So it'll tell me what species have been seen in this area lately. So I can see when they're most recently observed, places people went recently, the top birders in the area, the top places to go birding in the area. And then I'm like, oh, I really want to see a veery like Galpin saw. I can click on his checklist and see exactly what he saw. You can't go there. He said no. But yeah, so Galpin names his house private, go get your birds somewhere else. But you can see people's checklists and where they saw stuff.
You gotta watch out for these Franklin County listers, man. They're crazy. They go to your front door.
They are, but anyway, so then if you want to see even more good places to go birding in the area, you can open this explore hotspots. So say again, I'm looking for Columbus, Ohio. So zoom in and I can see again, there's a color gradient based on the species observed, and I can see, oh, there's a lot of orange pins around Battelle. So we love Battelle. Let's see, here's Pick Ponds where we were the other day. Some stuff around campus. So it's a really good place to just see places to go birding. And then for any of these, say I want to go, here's Blendon. I can view the details of there. Once it loads again. Okay, well, I'll give it a second to load. But anyways, it'll show you a similar view to like it did for Franklin County before with what birds have been seen there recently. And then there's also a nice way you can just map directly there through Google Maps. There we go. So you can see when people were there recently, what they saw, get Google Maps directions right here, and that sort of thing. What else do we have on here? Bar charts are another good way. So if there's not a specific species you want, or you don't know if it's even around right now, bar charts are a good way to figure out what's around or when you should expect something you want to see. So say I go into Ohio, I'm going to pick a county in Ohio, go to Franklin County, and say I really want to see warblers. So go down here, and it'll tell me, so each little block here is dedicated to a week in that month. So I can say, okay, I really want to see warblers. It looks like they're going to start really peaking at the end of September. So I'll know, okay, I'll look at where the hotspots people were having warblers. And I can see about when it's a good time to go there. And we use all this type of data when we're planning trips, like our fall break trip and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. People just not looking. All right. Other fun parts of the Explore tab. If you want to go for lifers, birds you've never seen before, I could say what birds are being seen in Franklin, Ohio. What? Okay. Well, I will say this month. You can say for like your world life list, your state, your county. I'll see for the county what I need. So it'll tell me the biggest thing I need is Wilson's warbler, which I should have been looking the right way on the trip last Saturday. But you can look at the map and see where they've been seen recently in the area. It'll pull up. There we go. So the red again is more recent. So I can see everywhere I should be going right now to go get those if that's what I want. Alerts, if you want to know of just any birds that pop up you either need for an area or what's considered a rare bird where you have to write those descriptions. You can subscribe to them. They'll send you emails. You can do hourly, daily, and then, or you can just check and see what's being seen where. Click on a checklist, all that good stuff. Let's see. Top 100, if you're really competitive, you can see the top birders in the area. So let's see, Franklin, Ohio this year for 2021. No surprise, Leslie Sowers and Alex are at the top. But it's just fun if you want to be competitive with it, see where people are ranked. Kelton, Kelton and Molly are both ahead of me. Hold on, wait, what?
Tyler Connell's still 14.
You went hard this spring, right? Am I still ahead of you all time, you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, as long as I'm ahead all time. Yeah. But you can also set up your yard on there, how many species you have for your yard, your patch, where you can do like collections of hotspots. So just kind of what that looks like. Because there's a bunch of different hotspots for OSU, you can like put them together and see what your OSU life list is, that sort of thing. And then the other thing I want to point out, the last thing on here is the photo and sound quiz. So this is a really cool way to practice ID and really start to learn species in the area you're in, or if you know you're going on a trip, you can put in like where you're going, what dates. So if I go to start quiz, I'll say current location today. You can start it. You can do photos or audio. And if it loads, it'll show you the photo. And then you work through and you can work on IDing it. You just have to rate the photo afterwards to go to the next one. But then you can go through and just quiz yourself on birds in the area. So that's the basics of eBird. There's much more to it, but those are like the general things I think most people will be using. So it's really good for your own benefit, keeping track of your own list, finding stuff, but it's also benefiting to just data that anyone can use for research. So it's a great website, and all of our trips and stuff will be making eBird checklists. So if you make an account, we'll get it all shared right to you. All right, so the next thing that we want to go over is just kind of more so, as it says, how to ID birds. Not necessarily just rattling off a bunch of species that we want you guys to memorize, because figuring out everything, learning birds can be a really long process. It's definitely a learning curve. So this is just going to give some tools to like help you going forward. And also for people who've been into birding for a while, good refresher on what certain stuff means. So kind of showing the importance of this. Say you saw a yellow songbird with black on the head. Here's Kentucky warbler, hooded warbler, prairie warbler. They're all yellow birds with black on the head. But as you can see, there's so many different specific field marks that make that different. So I've definitely had happen where I'm out in the field and I see something and I'm just trying to keep a mental note of it in my head. I'm like, all right, I'm going to look this up and see what it actually is. And by the time you look through like photos of every single species, you have no memory of what you actually saw because everything looks like what you saw. So if you're looking at specific field marks and remember, okay, I saw it had a black crown, then it helps you narrow stuff down, learning the IDs for later. Like I said, it's important for new people and it's good clarification for people with experience. So to kind of jump in, just do a really quick segment on the different parts of a bird. So like I said, that Kentucky had a black crown. So what are we referring to at these different areas? So the first part would be the crown. So this white crown sparrow here shows it really well. And just as you expect with a crown, it's the very top of the head. So the white crown has this white and black here. So that one's pretty straightforward. The lores are the area between the bill and the eyes. So you can see white-throated sparrow has the bright yellow lores there. So that's a pretty unique feature on some species. The supercilium, so that's kind of like the eyebrow. Some people refer to it as that, but you might see supercilium somewhere. So this water thrush shows it really well with the white above the eye. The malar stripe, so it's kind of like a mustache. So the flickers kind of are a characteristic species for this. And it's just kind of from the base of the bill down below the cheek. It's kind of like yellow mustache is what people call it. So the auriculars are the cheek. So just below the eye here. So clay-colored sparrow shows it really well, this like whole puffy area here. And again, that's another good one to look for in the face. So there's a lot in the face that is really helpful for especially a lot of our passerines like songbirds. Moving on to the nape is the back of the neck area. So like female evening grosbeaks show this is very yellow here. There's a triangle going on both sides. Just below it is the mantle. So the black-throated green, you can see the color really picks up again, this olive color back here between the wings. The breast is just below the throat of the bird. So perula shows really well. There's like yellow going into orange down here. That's a good spot to look at. The belly, so just below the breast, pretty straightforward on that turnstone, it's yellow. The flank, so this can sometimes be a little bit blocked by the wing. You can kind of see here, so the spay-breasted has an orangier color up here, goes to the yellow belly, or I'm sorry, where is it yellow? The white belly, and then you can see this rusty flank here. So that's something that a lot of species will show a different color on. And then the undertail covert. So I'll go into that a little bit more in a bit, but catbird's a really good bird to show it on because it's that gray and black all over. And it just has these bright rusty feathers under the tail. So it's not the actual tail feathers themselves, it's like the body feathers going into that kind of. So those are just the general areas to look for if you're looking, if you're trying to describe a species instead of being like, it had a black patch on its face somewhere. You can remember, okay, this is specifically at the malar stripe. So it just really helps you in narrowing down species. So something else to look for on the face is evidence of an eye ring. So you can see a complete one here with the Canada, this yellow eye ring all around. It's feathers around the eye, but it really just makes its eyes pop a lot. So sometimes you'll notice that with species where you'll just like the eye just really stood out to me. And that's a good way of knowing there's an eye ring. So Kirtland's here shows a broken eye ring. So instead of just noticing that there is one, if you can notice was it complete all the way around, did the head color break through it? Just different field marks you can notice. Moving on to bill length and shape, you might be thinking like, oh, this is pretty obvious. I can obviously tell like insect catching from a raptor, from a toucan. But again, it's just something to keep in mind and stop thinking like, oh, I should be looking for all these little details. These can really help you narrow down what family it is. And to kind of highlight that, jumping into a vireo versus a warbler. So we have a white vireo and a mostly blue-winged warbler, probably some hybrid in there. But you might be thinking, okay, this is both that insect catching bill, but if you zoom in, you can really see the difference here. So warblers have that very needle-like triangular long bill, and vireos will have a shorter bill. It's not quite as much to a point, a little more rounded. So even subtle differences like this, it doesn't have to be just like a gigantic difference and like a duck versus a songbird. These little differences can really help you with ideas. Something else about the bill, this was the term that it took me a few years that I'm like, okay, I don't even know what this is referring to, but I'm gonna just pretend I know what they're talking about. So often with our shorebirds, we'll talk about the droopiness of the bill. And this is also something that at first when you look at pictures, if you're newer to birding, you might be like, I see absolutely no difference here. And then once you start looking at more individuals and seeing individual variation between each species, you can start to pick up on general trends. So again, this is something that takes lots of practice, a lot of this. But so here we have a semi-pollinated sandpiper, and you can see the angle between the bill and the head and the chest there. And compared to like a Western sandpiper, so if you get the bills side by side, you can really see the semi-pollinated here has a greater angle than the Western. So it's more like the bill pointing down rather than out. So again, this is a trend that will hold true for the species that just slightly drooped there. And that way, if we're describing this while we're out birding somewhere, that's what that's referring to. Something else with angles that can be something subtle trying to see, but it is there sometimes, is different head shapes and angles. So this is really good for like ducks and shorebirds. And the good example of this is greater and lesser scop. So they look pretty similar. Body marking is the same. It's both kind of like an Oreo. It's dark on the outside, lighter in the middle. But the head shapes are different enough that it can be helpful in ID at times. So you have the greater scop on the left, and you can tell it's kind of a more subtle curve here, and then a nice round curve around the head. Whereas the lesser scop, it's like a much sharper angle, and it goes up, and then it's more flat across. And so again, it's looking really close, but there are field marks like this. I've heard of this cat. Greater starts with a G, the head's curved like a G, lesser starts with an L, it's a harsh angle like an. But again, it's just different things you can be looking for, and it's just showing that sometimes you look for really subtle differences. So that may look really similar at first glance. You can't ID them. So just looking for the subtle differences, realizing how big of differences we're talking about can be good. Another field mark to look for is green bars, and not just what colors we have going on. Just noticing different stuff, breaking up the colors. So pine grosbeak and black-throated green warbler are a good example of this, or just something else to be looking for. So back to undertail coverts. So if you were on, especially our first river walk, you might remember that we were trying to see this warbler flock going over, and all of our heads were like way back, staring straight up underneath on the warblers, and they were super high up. So we're not seeing those markings on the face I was talking about, maybe not the sides, that sort of thing. Just a brief view like that. But warblers especially, you can still get field marks from that. So if you look at this guide over here, you can see it kind of shows those undertail coverts. So if we're looking at our bird here, we have those white undertail coverts kind of making this triangle shape of the body. And then you have on the tail, there's still a little bit of white going past, and then black at the end. So if you look over there, you can tell it's a Magnolia warbler. So even something subtle like that, when you can't see most of the body, there's still a way to identify it. So yeah. There's a lot of different field marks to be looking for, but really when you're out in the field, it doesn't matter how great of a look you're getting, bad look at it, just any detail you're seeing, keep that in mind because it can be really beneficial for ID. Something else is light color. So kind of the really good example people use for this is Blackpool Warbler versus Bay-breasted Warbler. So if you look at our Blackpool down here, he has bright orange legs and Bay-breasted has darker legs. So looking at those, at first, if you saw them in the spring like those in the corners, you might think, why on earth do I have a hard time telling those apart? But then in the fall, when they're not being all showy, trying to get territories, get mates, they're just trying to blend in on their way back down in the fall. So they end up looking pretty similar. They both have wing bars that all decolor, but they retain this light color difference. So you can see the Blackpool still has orange feet, orange legs, and the Bay-breasted has like dark, almost black legs. So that's a really good field mark to look for as well. That's also going to be useful in shorebirds. So something you have to look out for is if they're on a mud flat, they could get the mud on their legs and be blonde color. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's another just really good field mark. Again, if you're underneath these birds, they're really high above you, you can't see their face and stuff. Definitely look at light color, that can be really beneficial. Let's see, and then just a couple things I wanted to go over real quick. So there could be instances where we're out birding and pointing out and saying like, okay, if you look out at all the shorebirds out there, look at the plover on the right. And if you're still learning species, you might be like, oh, I don't know which one's a plover. But there's some general differences within some families that can really help point you in the right direction. So sandpipers versus plovers are a good one. If you look at the sandpiper on the left, you can tell it has a pretty small eye, pretty thin, narrow bill, and just a general normal bird structure to it. In contrast, you have plovers with a much bigger eye, that stubby bill, just a very round, adorable shape. You just want to squeeze it. So that big eye, you might have had killdeer, that's a type of plover nesting after schools or something like that, very loud, running around in the grass. And you'll notice they're always screaming, it seems like. So these plovers are really useful in flocks of shorebirds that they can see a threat coming with their giant eye looking around, and they can alert the rest of the flock, which annoying as a birder, if a killdeer sees you and tells all the shorebirds you're there and they pick up and fly away. But if you notice differences like that, you can tell they're very structurally different. So if we're saying like, okay, look at the plover on the right side of the flock, you kind of know what to be looking for. Now along the same vein is gulls versus terns. So again, they have their differences to them as well. So if you're looking at a gull, it's a much heavier bill that then gets like sharper at the end. And again, they can look different. Different species can look a little different. Different angles of when they're flying or landed can look different. But in general, gulls will tend to have a thicker wing that then narrows out the end. But you can see through here, it's just more of a straight line almost from the base of the wing to the end. Where if you look at terns have a very thin bill, similar to what our warblers did. It's very long and pointy, and then they have very angular wings. So you can see there's this sharp angle here, they come to a point up there. So again, that'll help you if we're looking for a tern somewhere, you can know kind of what shape you're going for and sort through the different gulls. And then moving on to something fun. So a lot of the times, if you can't see a bird super well, or you're just having trouble distinguishing it, you can also use their vocalizations and sound for ID. So this can be helpful if you're out somewhere and not able to good view, you can get your voice memos out on your phone, record what you're hearing, and go back and identify it later. And then you can upload this to eBird too, which is fun. So to show kind of the difference we're talking here, if you're looking at willow versus alder flycatcher, you might be thinking, these look so similar. There's no way I can tell these apart. I'm looking at wing bars, I'm looking at the belly underneath. And you're basically right. So they're pretty much impossible to tell apart from each other visually. Unless you have them in the hand banding, you can do different measurements, see different things. But the sound is really the key ID difference between these. So to kind of show that, I'm going to show these. So first of all, I'll play a couple times so you can hear it. But willow flycatcher does more of, it's described as a fixed view call. So it's kind of like up, down, fixed view. Let's see. Then if you compare it to an alder, at first it might sound the same, but then after a second, this recording, the willow also calls, so I'll point that out. I'm going to turn this down at first because I think someone talks at the beginning, it'll be loud. Let's see, yeah. So it's described as more of a rebeer. So instead of doing as much of an up down, it's not as much as that. So you can hear. Then I think one of these ones coming up is when a willow calls right after. So I'll go back to it in a second. You can hear the willow quieter in the background. So louder, you hear the rebeer of the alder and then the Fitzview of the willow. So but enough that if you get a recording of it, you're comparing it later, you learn to recognize it, it can really help you with those IDs that's hard to do visually. So yeah, different ways to apply this. And instead of just being like, oh my gosh, I just heard all this stuff, I can send out these slides for people who want to look back over some of the field marks, that sort of thing. But just while you're getting started, use a field notebook while you're out birding, use a notes app on your phone. And just if there's a bird, you'll know what it is, just type down the field marks. Don't just down here, but put in the comments of your eBird checklist. I'm a very visual learner, so I like to see something, write down my notes about it, go back, reassociate together. So if you have your eBird checklist, you see where you were, what day, what comments that led you to that ID. It'll really help you go back and remember that later. Another good thing to add with this is field sketching. So we've done meetings on that in the past. I'd love to do again this year. But that's a good way. It doesn't have to be great. You don't have to be an artist, but just sketch down what you saw, where the field marks were. And you can even put that as a photo in the comments of your eBird checklist to go back and help you later remember what you saw. But again, that's a great tool for helping you learn the ID for later. Something I'm really into, just on that vein, is I love to crochet. So I crochet like different birds and stuff for fun. And I found when I go through and really analyze those field marks, it helps me remember them later. So just anything visual helping you put that together is really helpful. Taking photos and practicing the ID. If you're out in the field, just carry a camera with you if you have one. Doesn't have to be great photos, but you can just go back, look at them later, and remind yourself, okay, this was this species, I saw it here, this is the behavior I noted, that sort of thing. And then this eBird quizzes. So that's a phenomenal tool for going in and just rehearsing IDs, seeing what different photos look like, different views. Sometimes they don't always pick the best photos, which can be good because you're not going to get these great views anyway necessarily a lot of the time. So those are really helpful. So then we want to do a little full migrant quiz. So different variations, some are easier, some are harder, so we have fun putting together. So if you have your Merlin app, feel free to use that. We'll just kind of do this honor system basis, give each person like, I don't know, 90 seconds for
I don't know, give me 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah.
You
Yeah.
can like Google.
Yeah, you can Google, look stuff up.
Are we allowed to use Zoom?
Yeah,
Sure,
you
yeah.
can use whatever
Yeah.
resource you want.
Really whatever you want. But then whoever gets the most right, honor system, you guys gotta be honest about this. We'll give the Warbler app too. So
Anything short of actually taking a picture and uploading it to the auto ID.
yeah,
features
don't
of
do
Mail.
that.
Yeah.
That's dirty. Do not.
Not that it's not a good tool, but all the pictures we're using come from the database that they use, so it'll automatically get them right.
Yeah, so don't do that. But yeah, so if you guys want to get together, pose and stuff, go ahead and get started. Yay. All right. Yeah. I don't know if you guys want to type down like in your notes app and just switch apps back and forth. I didn't really think through that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that many that like, I don't know if
Yeah.
you added more. But
We'll have the answers appear after each bird. So if you get it wrong, just keep track how many you got wrong. All right. So to start with our first bird, here we go. Migrant around here right now. What's the screen?
we like turn the brightness. Yeah, we
Can
turn
I
the
like
lights.
turn the lights off? Yeah. Oh, I think I can turn the lights off.
And then that gives you like.
Oh, yeah.
It might be easier just to go to Google and look up.
all tests.
I'm worried that I like left the view up that just has like all the names there. I'm like, oh no.
But they're weird ones. You know, they're like
Black.
No, we got plenty of time.
Okay, so yeah, we can get more. I was gonna talk longer, but.
Oh,
Yep, that was the first result. Black back.
We'll see what I just.
Those are good results. Yeah, the first-
I
Just take
I'm
it.
gonna see keywords.
what? Oh, I just found this. Where?
a lot of birds.
On the abstract?
We do 2 minutes for each one. Slightly
Yeah.
over.
Is it a down here?
Let's do it. Yeah, 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll give like 15 more seconds or something. There's 11 total,
Does
so
anybody feel like they need like a lot more time?
it's a good amount of time. Cool. Sweet, I like that. All right, so to reveal what it is, this is American red start. So we've been seeing these on our walks recently. We've been on river walks. If you went to ponds with us. So good migrant to start off. You can tell the warbler has that longer bill. And yeah. Next species, here we go.
It's pretty brown, Cassidy. Pretty brown. So a lot to go on me. There's no color. So as you're scrolling through your apps,
Are these
there's
birds
little.
that are in Ohio?
Yeah, these are
This
birds.
time of year?
Yeah, these are birds that are in Ohio at this time of year.
Yes.
So you can see like the different bill shapes too. I will say that bill shape on this one is pretty important. And that can help you narrow down what family it's in. No, I mean, I found it to make it all from Ohio. Just because something's rare for Ohio doesn't mean it's not. I want to put in our. I thought it was
So yeah, it doesn't have like.
I feel like 15 more seconds or so.
I related to one.
I always overthink it.
I haven't.
I love doing quizzes now if I hated quizzes when I was.
Really?
All right, so we'll go ahead and reveal what this one is. So it's an indigo bunting. So you might be like, this looks nothing like the bright blue of an indigo bunting, but we're in the fall. So, but you can see that thicker bill is what will lead you away from like some or other songbirds.
A question. Are we gonna go over ideas again?
Yeah, we can take questions.
Yeah, we can go back to stuff. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next species. You can put both of these down. So I guess there's technically 12 birds. So figure out what's the difference between them and what each one is.
You really pissed that thing off.
Wait, am I? Your brother. Yellow or like slightly yellow. On that other.
Catherine, you didn't see what the last one.
I look at the beak. Is that a
Mine, I
big?
have another one at the end.
That means I get to participate.
It's
It's one you've seen.
So the one that's cooked beak, like cereal one.
The one that you needed me to identify.
We're saying.
No, he didn't need it. He was doing it as a joke.
It is.
No, not that one.
So
Let's see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, that'd be a good one.
It looks very.
Well,
Oh, I went over time. Okay. So I'll give you guys like 10 more seconds if you need them for these two.
I've just shown myself.
All right, so to reveal what the species are, we have red-eyed vireo and a Tennessee warbler. So if you look, this is a pretty bright Tennessee for the fall. In the spring, they'll be much brighter. But they're one that a lot of people mix up because they both have that gray crown to them, that olivey back, the white underneath. But the big thing to look for on some of these is that bill difference. So it's hard to see on this red-eyed vireo a bit, but it's a shorter, stubbier bill. And then you can see the Tennessee warbler has that very thin needle-like bill of the warbler. And there's some structural difference to them, but red-eyed vireo will be a bigger bird slightly. But
It's nearly double the size, if not triple.
I forget just how small Tennessees are sometimes. All right, moving on to the next one. There we go. We want to mix up the different.
a good thing to pay attention to here would be the relative length of the tail, and then the bill shape will help you narrow it down. You don't have to be expected to get this one right. I just thought it was pretty fun.
One piece now, Cal.
No, it's not mine. I actually don't have any. Well, I don't have flight shots of this species. Oh, yeah, no, I have tons of other names, but because we don't see a lot of in England. It's only like at the beginning. And like whenever we came to the beginning of the year, we could see the track down black.
I think the list of recording goes. So people
Yeah.
can put themselves asleep. That's not-
It's a long-tailed bush warbler.
All right, I'll do like 15 more seconds or so.
Does anybody think they really know what it is? I'm kind of curious. Yeah.
It's fish shaped back.
Couple, a collection of pixels.
Yeah. All right, so it's a pine warbler. So if you look like really close, you can see some of the different, the yellow up near the head, the whiter underneath. But a lot of the time, these are the views and photos you're going to be grabbing if something shoots over. So just looking for what field marks you can pick out can be really helpful. And we just want to have fun. All right, moving on. This guy.
Awesome. It's very correct.
Well, it's very good about that. Oh, I couldn't think about it.
That's all right. Yeah, he's quite handsome. For his mud puddle. The same place that whole shit was. Yesterday, and then I said it was
What was President Chambers the other day?
I got the.
This bird.
It was actually.
You're not.
Okay, like 15 more seconds or so.
But actually,
All right, so going for the ID of this one, we have Pectoral Sandpiper. On the bigger end of our sandpipers, they're kind of a good like base using when you're identifying a bunch of them. Moving on.
Another
Why
sandpiper.
were
As
you
a tree. Yeah, we kind of made the car.
You're really okay.
A good thing to look for here is the length of the wings is good here, and then pay specific attention to the color of the bill. See if the bill is all one uniform color, or is there a little splash of color somewhere along the length of it? You can see that. Oh, you can see it there. All right, maybe you can't see the color in the bill from here, but imagine a little splash of red in the face. Yeah, I guess. There's some easier ones, right? There's some easier ones after this, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think we alternated some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We done a lot of like. What'd you say? Wait, what?
I was like,
15 more
it's
seconds
easier
or
one,
so.
right? And I was like, no, we put a flycatcher in there.
Okay, but wait
Yeah,
till you
welcome
see.
to
No,
British.
wait.
That's great.
No, wait till you see what's coming. All right, so the ID for this guy is Blackpool Sandpiper. So we were saying the wing protection being really long is helpful, but just like scared.
And then the color, you can't see it, but if you look up on that monitor, you can see a bit patch of red right at the base of the
That is
seat.
literally the picture that you.
Yeah, oh, is that one of the pictures on Merlin? Yeah, that's really good. It's a really good picture. But so there's only two sandpipers that have this general color pattern that have any color in the bill. The others in this genus are completely black bills. So white rum sandpiper and the last one, pectoral sandpiper, both have a little splash of color in the base. So if you see that, you know it's one of those two. If you look at this back monitor, you can see it a little better.
You can see it right at the base of the bill.
I see it.
And what genus is it?
Plovers.
All right, next one. Okay, I know. No.
Yeah, Cassidy had no chill on this booth. That's cool. These are not like easy words to ID. I know. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was you.
Oh.
I can't answer.
I mean, yeah, I can't say anything.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
You're welcome.
So something to notice when you're going to like the family for this, notice the posture, how upright it's sitting.
And how you can see a little bit of the wing poking down even below that branch, which means it has really long wings compared to other similar species there.
Fifteen more seconds or so.
He's breed in the States. He's breed in the States.
Really?
Okay. He's breed in the state, Ohio. Quite
All right, so this is an eastern wood kiwi. Yes. So You might be looking at olive side flycatchers that will also have the similar what's called like a vest on either side, darker for flycatchers. But olive side will be like even more dark. Darker, that's the word. Yeah.
I'm not.
All right, next guy.
Oh.
See, that's nice. That's a nice.
She actually tries.
Yeah, he did. He did.
But I kind of suggested.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that was her fault.
I was seeing something the other day that there was a field mark, but I think it's bullshit. They were saying that the wingbat panels, so the greater coverts, like the wingboard, they were saying that on this species is like completely dark, and then on the similar species is like really strongly edged with green. But then I looked through like a bunch of pictures, and it's like,
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I don't know what's going on. I would know what's going on.
Hey, so you never shared the Cape May slides with me.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was planning on talking about it. They're also, they're on the drive.
Are they really?
I figured you'd want to talk about it, like, not going to the slides. Yeah.
15 more seconds or so. Yeah, I was like.
Yeah.
No.
You can sit.
All right, so the idea of this guy here is bay-breasted warblers. So you might have thought like it's not showing the color, like we said. So even though it's pale here, individual variation, you can still see those dark flecks on white. So sometimes you'll hear people because Blackpool and bay-breasted look similar, they'll just call them bay holes in the fall. All right, next one. There's I think one more. No, but there's something that we.
Okay, all right. No, I accept it. I accept it.
Oh, yeah, Columbus. I'm like,
Or like a.
You guys want to start the bottom?
Yes.
We have to be proud.
Let's go.
Like a foraging club.
Yeah, that might be.
I saw when I. I got.
Oh, I was like, why, there's no botany club. Start one. No, I was, there's no botany club. That was the part. That's kind of.
I mean, there's an association with horticulture. Horticulture? Is that a
That
club?
sounds like an industrial.
Yeah, is it a club or like a class? Student association.
Yeah.
Club? Sick, okay, sorry.
About 15 more seconds or so.
Wish I knew what close meant.
All right, so for the idea of this one here is Magnolia Warbler. So you might recall it has, you did it earlier, it has the white on the tail here and then the black tip. So again, looking at that undertail, it's really helpful even when the bird's really hidden.
One more.
I think there's one more. I think it's this one. No, there's two more. Two more, my bad. Two more.
That's a wrap.
Curious. So curious what the last one is.
I told you.
No, I didn't realize it.
I'm gonna try. Oh, my phone is over there.
I just thought.
Oh, that one. I didn't know.
I can't remember. It's okay, I appreciate it.
It's like a young
Westy told me like.
Yeah, for real. You don't have to do this like this. But this is pretty met it, you know, where you're Broadway. I met it. Is it?
Oh, it's by Chris Wood.
I think it's.
Who knows that guy? He's famous. Well, he's not famous.
15 more seconds.
Yes, this is a gray hawk. This is a gray hawk.
Short tail.
Are you inverting?
Alright.
Alrighty, so this is a broadwing hawk. So we had one of these briefly, some of us saw it at Pickering Ponds. But the big thing to notice here on apart from like a red shouldered is like the banding on the tail, first of all, would bring you to the species. Look at the difference here, the dark edge to it. Good field marks to be looking at. I think this is the last one. Yes, this is the last one. Oh, yeah, another fun one.
Another fish.
Sorry.
You don't feel it.
It's just the light because it's such harsh light.
It's gotta be a bill. It's gotta be a bill.
Yeah, but they are like, they're chunky.
Oh.
I'm watching like the 5 stages of despair.
I'm thinking, do you want to have anything?
You don't even have your phone out. Come on.
I think that's great.
Sorry.
That's big black tail. Or that's just really strong shadow.
And what is the color?
It's a sham.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, wait.
This was amazing. This is.
Maybe not the wings on the tail. Okay.
Be a bigger bird.
All right, about 15 more seconds.
Is it literally called a black and white?
All right, so the idea of this guy is black and white warbler. So you might be thinking like, it looks like there's some color in here. But keep in mind, looking at your photos later, what time of day were you shooting? Was there harsh like golden lighting on it? And then look at this bill here that helps with, and then it has a warbler. You can kind of see that's long, but this is a hard photo. But
Most of these were pretty hard.
yeah, they were pretty hard. So now we know how to change it for next time difficulty wise, but yeah, okay. So figure I'm gonna put the light back on.
Wait a minute.
Does anybody have any pressing, urgent questions about how to identify any of those birds?
Yeah, I have no idea how to approach the flycatcher at all.
The flycatcher,
Nor do I know how to approach the bunting.
the bunting.
Okay.
So for both of those, or I can talk.
You wanna
Go
go for it, yeah.
So for both of those, structure, especially of the head and the bill, is really important. So for the flycatcher, you can see that the bill here is like triangular. You can see it's like super wide at the base, and then it comes into like a short point. If you were to look at it from underneath, it's just a straight up triangle, and that gets you to the flycatcher family. You see on the eye here, eye ring is an important thing to note with a lot of flycatchers. This one like barely has an eye ring, which basically takes out anything like least or yellow bellied or even a bright willow or alder flycatcher. Could be willow still, but then we see like this kind of like faint vest on the side here, kind of points you in the direction of a peewee away from Empress. And then if you see how upright it's sitting on the branch, it gives you the impression of really like slender vertical bird. That's a pretty classic peewee posture. And then you see it's kind of got a big crested head here and these long wings sticking down below the branch. Most of the Infinimax flycatchers would have their wings cut off somewhere behind this branch because they're shorter distance migrants. That kind of gets confused there. And then for the bunting, again, the first thing you want to note is the bill. It's super like conical, so it gets you to like pinch or sparrow level. And then this general like lack of any markings, just completely brown, not really any contrast in the plumage anywhere, standard. And then most importantly, the triangular, but in a vertical way, right? Not like flycatcher, it's very thick. You can see it's made for like cracking seeds open. They feed on the ground, they eat a lot of seeds in the fall. Bunting. It is not indigo at this time of year. Yes. The pine warbler, yes. This is a hard ID. It is identifiable. It's at a tough angle. You can see it's flying. It's kind of angling away from the camera, right? So you kind of take that into account when you're looking at it, because that angle can cause some tricks with proportions. But if you see here, the tail is kind of folded in, and it looks kind of standard. So you can imagine that if this pine warbler were to be put perpendicular to the camera lens here, that would be a pretty long tail. And pine is one of our longest tailed warblers. And that combined with this general like low contrast, it's kind of yellowy towards the front, and then it kind of fades into this, you know, almost nothing's happening through it. There's no like distinct mark. Yeah.
I'm just not used to them having that much color under the throat this time of year.
This time of year, they can still retain it. I remember we had a really bright one on our Pectoral trip in October last year. So pines are one of those warblers that are just incredibly variable plumage-wise. They can go from like completely gray, no color, to like this, where it's super bright on the face and the throat, bright yellow. And then you can see a faint iron up here. That's also a good mark for pine. And then if you really wanted to get into it, this undertail pattern is, honestly, I don't know the undertail patterns too well, so I can't tell you what about it is indicative of pine, but you can see that it does have white markings on the outer tail feathers here, which is a pretty standard warbler pattern. You can really get into the strength of those markings on the specific tail patterns if you're really into it. But a lot of the time, if you're seeing a bird in flight like this, you're not going to be looking through your binoculars and seeing, oh look, there's a limited white patch on the third outer tail feather. Like you're not doing that. So better here to note the general color, kind of dullish yellow, super long tail, kind of a heavier bill for a warbler, things like that. But again, very hard.
It's a hard one. Are there any others who want to go back? Okay, so what's the best way to do this? We had 12 different species because the one slide had 2. So I want to get like 7 of them right. Yeah? Did you say I did? Did anyone else? Did you guys like?
Put your hands up.
Yeah.
Put them in the air. Put them on.
All right.
Did anybody get 7 right?
Well, how many were
12.
What about 8?
Keep your hands in the air. Keep
This
them
guy
on.
didn't get any wrong.
You did? You have it
If
right?
you got them all right, then.
That's awesome. Nice.
Someone else.
What'd you say?
Yeah.
Oh, you already have it? Yeah. Do you have it?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have
So-
an ID or you already? Okay, yeah. You can just do whatever with it. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
All right, everybody, if you want the warbler guide app, talk to Josh, state your case for why you want it, and he will choose who gets it. Then let us know and we'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Somehow, we'll Venmo you.
We'll figure it out. Yeah. All right. Oh. Get through these. Yeah. Okay. So thank you guys for coming. Real quick announcement. Gavin, you want to mention Science Olympiad?
Yeah, so were any of you guys in Science Olympiad in high school or middle school? There you go. Yeah. So yeah. So I was too for like 6 years, had an absolute blast, got into like biology through that. And yeah, so Science Olympiad is this high school, middle school competition, which we've helped with in the past. They have regional competitions, state competitions, and invitationals. This year, there's a group at Ohio State starting an invitational. So it's like an invitational for any sports. Like a bunch of schools come here and compete. One of the events this year is ornithology. So we've been asked to help write a test, and then probably proctor the exam as well. So it's like a good fun day where you get to interact with kids and while they quiz them on birds.
I think it was like lunch and shirts, right?
Yeah.
We do in fact have
The
volunteers.
shirts are really comfy. They're really nice. Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, put your name on a list or something.
Yeah, we'll get something signed on the group. We just want to get that on people's radar. Gavin and I are gonna be signing that up. But yeah, if you want to help write the test, it was a really fun time. It's fun to really like look into some different species, find out some like Black history, different stuff about them. What else? Let's see. Stick around today if you want to talk about Cape May. We have a meeting about the fall break trip. So if you're interested in that, please stick around for it. If you can't come on the Cape May trip, I was talking with Amy and she's gonna try and do like a river walk and then like a trip that Saturday. So you can still go birding and enjoy your fall break, looking at birds. Riverwalk tomorrow, September 10th at 5:30, same time, same place, it's near St. John bus stop. Then our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today. So thank you guys so much for coming. All right, good to see you all.
And yeah, if you're interested in